Republicans in Congress, well, actually, a Republican in Congress. It turns out he doesn't even have his entire committee with him. Paul Ryan. Yes, Mr. End Welfare as we know it. Paul Ryan laid out his vision for America today in a pretty disgusting French-kissing session with Joe Scarborough this morning on MSNBC. He basically said, well, I'll get to that. If he succeeds, if Paul Ryan succeeds, the 99% of us are basically condemned to live like serfs. House Budget Committee Chairman Paul Ryan, himself a multimillionaire, released his blueprint budget for fiscal year 2013, which includes massive cuts to food stamps, student loans, Medicaid, and Social Security. The budget also dismantles Medicare as we know it, transforming an insurance program into a voucher program, leaving millions of senior citizens on their own to deal with for-profit health insurance companies. And in a nod to the Republican Party's super rich members like himself, Ryan proposes enormous tax breaks for the 1%, lowering the top income tax rate from 35% down to 25%. Oh, that's going to be just great, isn't it? We had a strong and powerful and vibrant middle class when the top tax rate for millionaires and billionaires was 91%. 30 to 1 was the top ratio that you saw of CEO pay to worker pay. Reagan dropped that down to 28%, and all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. Millionaires and billionaires went to 1,000 to 1, 10,000 to 1 in some industries, what they're making versus what their employees are making. The rich got richer, the poor got poorer, the minimum wage became worth less and less. Anyhow, according to the Tax Policy Center, Ryan's budget would give $3 trillion in tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans, all paid for by cutting spending on education, health care, and Medicare. Congressman Ryan said about his budget, this is an actual quote. Listen carefully. He said, "It's up to the people to demand a choice between two futures. The question is, which future will you choose?" End quote. That is the question. He's right on that. You know, he's wrong on everything else, but he's right on that. We have to choose the future in which we want. Do we want a future in which we have a middle class again? That it can thrive in America like it did for 50 years after the New Deal until Ronald Reagan blew everything up? Or are we going to choose Paul Ryan's path to an Ayn Rand dystopia in which only the super wealthy can go to good schools and see doctors and everyone else is left with what trickles off the edge of the table of the rich? You know, we used to have an American dream in this country. The American dream was not, someday I'll win a lottery. Or someday I'll, invent a software product and become a billionaire. No, that wasn't the American dream. The American dream was that if you worked hard and kept your nose clean, you could raise your family, buy a house and a car, take an annual vacation, have health coverage, and safely retire with a comfortable nest egg. Teddy Roosevelt laid this out in the 1900s and teens. The Republican Roosevelt. He said, I stand for not a minimum wage, a living wage. And then he went on to say, a living wage is determined by industrial conditions locally, right? In other words, it varies from place to place in the country. But it has to have a certain minimum components. And then he goes through the list. It has to be enough to care for your family in times of sickness and in health. In other words, pay for health care. It needs to be enough to provide for a vacation. And it needs to be enough to provide for morality, he said. In other words, you don't have to steal for your food. Because literally, people had to steal food back then. And enough to provide for a decent retirement in old age. Here's Teddy Roosevelt from more than 100 years ago, a recording personally made by Thomas Alva Edison.
We stand for a living wage. Wages are subnormal if they fail to provide a living for those who devote their time and energy to industrial occupation. The monetary equivalent of a living wage varies according to local conditions, but must include enough to secure the elements of a normal standard of living. A standard high enough to make morality possible, to provide for education, to maintain the family during periods of sickness, and to permit a reasonable saving for old age.
There you go. A living wage. And a living wage includes health care and vacations and retirement. And that was over 100 years ago. And it has been fought tooth and nail by Republicans ever since. Even though Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican. He ultimately became not a Republican anymore. Just like Jim Jeffords. Okay, this party has gone nuts. I'm out of here. He started the Bull Moose Party. But the American dream was made possible by one thing: big government. Now, big government in the United States is a kind of funny word because, our government represents about 20, 21, 22% of our GDP in the United States, depending on the year. And in Canada, the government represents over half of the GDP. In virtually every developed country in the world, government represents between 50 and 65% of GDP. Here it's 21%. And we call this big government? So first of all, you get that the whole idea, that this whole phrase big government is simply a right-wing buzzword that has no meaning. We don't have a big government. We have a government half the size of any other developed country in the world to begin with. Why is it half the size? Because if we doubled the size of government, we could give everybody the right to health care and free public education all the way up to MD, PhD, which all the other governments do in variations. But that big government that the conservatives are so hysterical about that they want to destroy, which seems fundamentally anti-American to me, doesn't it to you? I mean, government is the United States. This is what the founders, 56 people signed the Declaration of Independence, and literally, they said we pledge our, I forget the exact language, but it's brilliant. In fact, let me read it to you, because this is what these guys did. They knew that when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they were literally signing their own death warrants, and they literally did. They were all sentenced to be hung by the neck till dead by King George. By King George the third by that point. He said at the very end, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And they did. Half of them were wiped out by the war. So big government protected workers' rights to unionize, so those jobs paid well and had decent benefits. Big government imposed trade regulations and import tariffs to keep manufacturing jobs here in the U.S., making a middle class possible. Big government provided free public school education to everybody in America, at least until Reagan put Bill Bennett in charge of the Department of Education, the guy who had wanted to scrap the Department of Education. Big government was the employer of last resort in the 30s and 40s and brought us out of the Great Depression. Big government sent an entire generation of young men through college for free with the GI Bill in the 1950s, the way my dad went to college. Provided free or nearly free college education in states from California and New York before Reagan ended it when he became the governor of California, and then nationwide as president. Government provides the legal and financial framework for government to work through for companies to work through limitations of liability on incorporation, special tax breaks for corporations, stable monetary system. Government provides businesses with an educated workforce, good roads, rails, transportation, airplanes, airports, safe streets protected by police and firefighters. We need it.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Those programs, that government is what made the American dream possible, and it's those programs that Paul Ryan wants to slash. We can't let it.